So good evening, everybody. I'm Janice from Cyberpeace Foundation. Thank you for taking the time and joining us today for this webinar. So we are here live with our expert panelists, and today we'll talk about the role of schools in establishing the importance of online safety and ensuring that children stay safe online. So this is the second webinar that is being conducted in a series of webinars this week, and it has been jointly organized by the National Commission for the Protection of Child Rights and by Cyberpeace Foundation. So let's quickly get to know our panelists and get right into it. So we have with us Professor Ranjana Arora. She's the head of the Department of Curriculum Studies at NCERT. Hi, ma'am. Thank you for joining us. Next, we have Ms. Sheetal Bapat, who is the founder and director of the Shamchi Ai Foundation. She has impacted the lives of more than 30 lakh students and 40,000 teachers in the field of adolescent issues, career guidance, and teacher training. Thank you for joining us, ma'am. We also have with us Dr. Manoj Sharma, who is from the Department of Clinical Psychology. He runs the Shut Clinic at NIMHANS, which is the first of its kind clinic that deals specifically with cyber-related issues and disorders and problems that children may face. We also have with us Mr. Achin Jakhar, who is an advocate and also a cybersecurity expert. He has been in this domain for over 2 decades. He has been a principal cybersecurity advisor to many companies in the nation and also worldwide. He has a master's degree with specialization in advanced networks, and he is a noted lawyer in the field of cyber law. Thank you for joining us, sir. And guys, we'll also be joined shortly by Mr. Bishwajit Saha, who is the director of skill education and training with CBSE. So once again, thank you to all the panelists for joining us. And since all of you are experts in your domains, I think the topic today will really, come out very beautifully since all of you are from the different aspects that do affect a child. So we have your legal standpoint, we have the curriculum, we have your mental and emotional aspect, and we have the whole training segment, which also plays a very important role. So I think today we'll be able to come out with a lot of enlightening points and recommendations that hopefully will help us build a safer and resilient cyberspace. So guys, let's get right into it. Professor Ranjana, we'd like to begin with you. Now, since you are heading the Department of Curriculum Design, I'm sure you have a lot of idea about what goes behind developing curriculum. The fact that it forms the base of a child when they go to school and they go to classes. So, ma'am, one major question that I'm sure even the experts would agree with is there has been a major shift in the way classes are going on these days. We are no longer visiting schools and colleges, everything is online. Number one, it is unprecedented, and it would be safe to say that we are not really prepared for this kind of a shift. So, ma'am, keeping this whole lockdown situation and the shift from offline to online in mind, my first question is how do you think the curriculum would change in the upcoming few days and probably in the next few months to incorporate this whole aspect of online safety? Because it is much more important now considering everything is online. So, ma'am, the first question, if you would like to answer this, then we'll move to the next.
Thank you, Janice. Yes, this is a very pertinent question. These days, even we at the NCRT continuously into this discussion that now how this the scenario of education will change in the future and what kind of transformation need to be there in school education. And of course, during this 2005 National Curriculum Framework preparation, also we did take care of something on ICT, integration of ICT for teaching learning process. But of course, not very comprehensively we did include that. But this time, actually, we are in the process of initiating this National Curriculum Framework development, and we are into this and internally we had started discussion. Of course, this time this curriculum framework will provide lots of space to this online digital education, and of course then cybersecurity issues will also come into this. And while talking about this curriculum reform, we would include not only this consumer approach of online education, but of course prosumer approach, because unless children will themselves know how to produce things, they will not be able to understand the nitty-gritties and the precautions they need to take, and how they can go about it. So those kinds of things we are going to include. Of course, cyber ethics. Also, we would be talking into this next curriculum reform thing, because right from the beginning now, teachers, school heads, they need to start discussion on cyber security issue, online education issue, how this is helping us, how this is not the replacement of face to face, but it supplements and complements face to face school education. Those kinds of things we need to talk about that. And the um, I would like to say that we need to now actually inbuild the culture of online education, digital education into this new curriculum framework. So definitely lots of space we are going to give, not only this PowerPoint presentation or these kinds of things, but the whole roadmap, that how a teacher or school can go ahead with this online education, which will be beneficial for children, and of course that would be help in their holistic development.
Right, ma'am, absolutely correct. Ma'am, also one more question just to follow up with this. So, as you mentioned, we can't have a consumer approach, just a consumer approach anymore. We have to actively participate in building a safer environment and learning and educating ourselves as well. So, ma'am, in addition to this, students, of course, they have their actual books and the course material that they refer to. Other than this, what recommendations would you give to students and schools? What kind of activities should they engage in to initiate these conversations on online safety and responsible behavior and cyber ethics, as you mentioned? So what recommendations,
Uh,
suggestions would you give?
yes, uh, I think you might have heard this alternative academic calendar. We have come out with this alternative academic calendar this time, because suddenly this pandemic has cropped in, and
Yes.
the students had to stay back in home, and of course teachers also. And there was really a very complex situation before us, what to do and how to
Yes.
do. And you all maybe agreed with me that of course all the children do not have this smartphone or
Yes.
a laptop or television. Maybe they can start with only mobile, and very simple mobile also, basic mobile also. So we had come out with this alternative academic calendar, in which we did talk a number of activities going beyond these textbooks. Actually, NCRT has this learning outcomes in place now for elementary as well as secondary. If you see the learning outcomes, these learning outcomes don't require actually the formal kind of textbook approach. If teacher plan activities, or students plan, even parents, if they can plan, they can help children to progress on those kinds of learning outcomes through variety of learning resources. So of course we need to go beyond these textbooks. Textbooks will be there, but
Hmm.
apart or besides these textbooks, we need to have so many activities. We have now kits available. We can do experiments. Of course, COVID situation, after COVID situation, we should go to school, and we have lots of laboratories, libraries. So those kinds of things will always be there. But we are also including pre-vocational education skills, so that children can also practice this kind of thing, that pre-vocation, that productive activities at home as well as school. So there are a number of online as well as face-to-face activities we have given in alternative calendar, and use of different kinds of tools, whether it is social media tools, whether it is ICT, otherwise tools like maybe the teacher can generate lots of quizzes using online open software. They can
Hmm.
use they can virtual tour they can do with students. So there are many activities we have suggested in geography, in even subject specific activities, and also empowering teacher, that how can they conduct these activities when children are at home. And suppose if a child has only a basic mobile, not even smartphone, then we have also included the self-study approach that teacher can trigger or guide parents of that child or that child itself, and then again follow up with the child that whatever I have guided you, have you done this? So not only online assessment, but also online teaching learning we have included in this alternative calendar. And of course, we did talk about cyber security also. That how can teacher keep in view that privacy of these children, and they need not to share their names and all whenever they are conducting online group meeting or online conferences. So how can they themselves guide students that they also have to keep their privacy intact. And of course they will also talk about that they should not, like, the way they behave in face to face situation, they need to behave in this online situation as well. So those kinds of things we did talk about in our alternative calendar, and we would be continuing these kinds of things in this curriculum also.
Right. Okay. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much. I think there's a lot that is happening, but we again have to make ourselves aware of the changes and also how we can deal with the changes. So I think this alternative calendar is going to be very useful for students and also for adults as to understand this change and be able to deal with it in the best possible way. So we've been joined by Dr. Bishwajit Saha. Thank you, sir, for joining us. I know that you were a little busy before this. So quickly, just to introduce sir, he's the director for skill development and training with CBSE. And so we were just speaking to Professor Ranjana, and we'll be coming to you also very shortly with a few questions that we have. So Dr. Ranjana, we'll come back with you. We will come back to you with more questions. Next, I'd like to speak to Ms. Sheetal. Ma'am, so you have been conducting a lot of sessions and you've been doing these trainings. So you do have a lot of idea about what goes on the ground, the actual problems that students and teachers are facing. So ma'am, again, just to quickly recap, there has been a shift. The whole dynamic of a classroom has changed. Everything is happening online now, and we don't really know if we'll ever go back to that pure offline status as before. We're not really sure. We don't know what time has in the future for us. So ma'am, the first question is, what role does a teacher training hold in equipping teachers to cope up with the challenges that they are facing in this completely changed environment? Ma'am, you'll have to unmute. We can't hear you. Yes.
Yeah, can you hear me
Perfect.
now?
Perfect. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Thanks. This is what happens. See, technology is something
Live
which all of us are.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So I think, this is a really challenging time for all of us put together, basically. And whether it is teachers or parents, we're all well-meaning adults trying to keep our children safe, under all circumstances. So if we see in the initial days, like right now, in the last few years, we've seen that the teacher's role has transitioned. Earlier, knowledge and information was textbooks, and teachers were the only major source of knowledge and information. And but now we've seen that information is available at the fingertips of everybody, basically.
Yes.
To say. So the teacher's role is transitioned from a teacher to a facilitator. And what does it mean to be a facilitator? That was something which a lot of teacher training was focusing on, and teachers were just recently kind of adjusting to this whole process of being facilitators, in this teaching learning process. And so because majorly what happens is your learning style becomes your teaching style. So over this transition, teachers were struggling. I mean, all of us were struggling. And now suddenly, by the time you get adjusted to this change, now there's another paradigm shift, which is completely virtual. So from your classrooms, physical spaces, everybody's transformed into a virtual space, which is again a challenging situation for most of us, basically, for teachers especially. So again, trying to adjust to these kind of nitty-gritties is going to be challenging for teachers. And when I say teachers, it is not just teachers in the urban pockets or certain affluent schools. I'm talking about the length and breadth of India, which is such a diverse country, the kind of infrastructure we have, the kind of regional issues that we have. So migrant labor, so many things that we are seeing right now. So in this whole crisis, how does the teacher once again redefine their role? So here, I think training is going to be very, very important for teachers. And to reach this kind of numbers, we need to have more and more online teacher training also. But again, we cannot have a training and say, okay, now we have given some do's and don'ts and the teacher is going to follow, because it's a paradigm shift, as I said. So for any change to happen, there are normally four major steps that we say: pre-contemplation, contemplation, preparation, action, and then maintenance. So we need to have long-term hand-holding with teachers, have a ecosystem where these kind of things are happening. So I feel the role of teacher training, along with certain safe spaces in schools and society where these topics are discussed more openly, and there is a kind of a because children are going to have a lot of questions, where if you talk about cyber
Absolutely.
security, they're going to have questions and they need the answers from maybe people from technology side, from experts from psychology, from all kinds of answers they're going to need, basically. So we need these spaces as well as teacher training and hand holding with teachers is what I feel.
Right. Thank you. We'll just come back with you with more questions. And Dr. Manoj, you're also here. And I think being a psychologist, you will be able to throw some light on the various impacts that this change may have on students. So first and foremost, sir, most schools are required to have counselors. But because of various reasons, they may not have a counselor in place. There may be financial restrictions, there may be logistical challenges. So end of the day, we do have schools that don't have counselors. And in such situations, children often reach out to other teachers with their issues. It can be something as simple as cyberbullying going on. Now that classes are happening online, children may just gang up and behave in an inappropriate manner. So when a regular class teacher or a class teacher who does not specialize in counseling is approached by these teachers, to what extent should they be engaging themselves, considering this is not their domain, number one? Number two, what kind of pointers should a teacher keep in mind? I mean, with respect to dealing with the issue or even referring them further to mental health experts. So, if you could just maybe throw light on these two issues that we may face.
Basically, I think because since counselors are not there in most of the schools, so the teachers have a bigger responsibility in terms of enhancing the cyber literacy of the children.
Right.
And most of the things are happening online, and the teachers are spending maximum time with the children. I think in comparison to, I would say, to families, children are spending almost 4 to 5 hours definitely every day with the children.
Yes.
So definitely, I think there is a need for cyber literacy among teachers. I think there should be some program that's an independent issue where teachers can be educated like what they have to do when this kind of issue comes up, and wherever they feel the need that after screening these kind of questions, if they feel uncomfortable or they feel they're not so competent to handle those issues, where they can refer to. So that is the one thing. And second thing which comes up, like in case children comes out with any cyber related issues, rather than ignoring those questions, the teacher must pay attention to those questions. It's basically mean acknowledgement of those questions.
Yes.
So that they feel more self-application, that I am acknowledged, I am listened to. That's the first therapeutic thing which every teacher should do, whether they have knowledge or they don't have knowledge. They should listen to the child question and explore more what are the repercussions he or she is having in her day-to-day life.
Right.
Whether these concerns are affecting their academic activities, they are not able to pay attention, they are not able to concentrate. Are they paying attention to their leisure activities, they are not able to enjoy those activities, or they are also disturbing their social interaction as well as sleep schedule and other biological activities. Even the teacher does this kind of listening job will allow the child to ventilate out, and as and when the issue comes up, if the teachers feel comfortable, they can handle those issues. Otherwise, they can definitely have some reference centers name with them where they can refer these cases for further help.
Right. Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Next, I'd like to speak to Mr. Achin. So, sir, since you're a lawyer and you're very much aware of all the legalities and the fact that certain activities may actually attract penalty and punishment. But again, I don't really feel if you stick a bunch of laws in a school, a classroom, or even put it online, children won't really care. I mean, if you tell them that, calling somebody pet names is a crime, I don't really think it's going to affect them or even scare them, to say the least. So, how do you feel these guidelines that one must follow online to ensure their safety as well as the safety of others? How can we translate these guidelines into a format that is conducive to the school environment and can actually be easily digested and accepted by students?
All right. See, first of all, what we need to understand is who is our target audience over here. Like when we
Mm-hmm.
talk about cyberbullying into this environment, it's children who are right from primary grade all the way till the secondary and higher secondary grade. Now, since we all talked about the whole paradigm shift, moving to e-classrooms, now with challenging time comes a whole lot of other challenges to which we were not prepared. A
Yes.
lot of the schools, they jumped into this e-environment just because they wanted to keep up with everybody else. They started e-classrooms. They in a hurry signed up with so many learning management tools, and
Yes.
but they forgot what is the most basic thing. The
Hmm.
most basic thing is the discipline. How a
Yes.
children goes to a school, a child goes to a school, he follows certain set of rules, and he has to behave in a particular way, he has
Hmm.
to act in a particular way. A mentor and a child, or a mentor child to parent relationship, is very well defined in a school. We have to do the same thing when we talk about e-classroom.
Hmm.
So one of the first thing what we need to do is, when you talked about the legalities, who has the onus when things go wrong? Now, if a
Hmm.
child is in the school has to bear the onus if something goes wrong, if
Hmm.
the policies are not well defined. For an example, what happened in Gurgaon a couple of years back? There was a very grievous incident which happened at Ryan School. The
Yes.
school did not follow the set of procedures, which
Yes.
were the security guidelines made be right from placing cameras to monitoring everything.
Yes.
So the school had to bear the onus. So in an e-environment, the school has to share the responsibility. God forbid something goes wrong.
Hmm.
So this
Yes.
is something, like which is clearly defined. So according to me, we need to have a proper guidelines. We
Hmm.
talked a lot about, like everybody very rightly said, that training is paramount. But
Hmm.
training for who?
Hmm.
First of all, the training for people who are organizing these classrooms. These classrooms are organized by school. So they created a basic infrastructure. They bought programs like Microsoft Teams, they got Zoom classrooms or any other. There are hundreds of apps
Platform.
which
Yes.
have propped up. So first of all the schools, what they need to understand is to create a basic secure infrastructure
Right.
to conduct these classrooms. In the secure infrastructure, now I'll cite some common examples which we have seen in the past 2 months. There is a class going on. There are children who are attending the class. Now,
Hmm.
some of the schools, they forget to turn off an option that I'm talking about, very basic thing over
Basics.
here. That there are settings over there like that you can mute somebody else's mic. A child
Yes.
is speaking, his peers, they muted his mic. They started making fun on behind the
Hmm. Screen.
on those private chats over there. Now, these things are pretty serious, but they
Hmm.
can be very well controlled by the school if they spend some time understanding what are the various nitty-gritties of these software and how to run them securely. Now,
Hmm.
school also has to have some focus. What kind of training is to be given to parents? Because
Hmm.
ultimately, a child is not in your school premise. A child is at home. At home, one of the most conducting person over there is a parent. So parents have to be told that this is the decorum we expect your child to maintain when he is in a classroom, which is an e-classroom.
Hmm.
So this is actually very, very important. Now, a lot of time, children, they conduct their own meetings using the school tools. Now, over
Yes.
here, the school has a very, very intelligent question to ask themselves. If there is a crime committed using these tools, I'll give you a hypothetical example. Students created a chat room on Microsoft Teams, which is a tool given by the school. They started sharing some comments or videos or anything at all, and suddenly, like, it leads up to a crime. School is responsible as much as the students over there. So again,
Hmm.
my point is very simple. It has to be a multi-stage training. First, every school has to stick to certain guidelines. These guidelines act as a basic principle of what is to be given to students, how much control is to be given to students, what has to be told to parents, what do parents have to see everything. Every class
Hmm.
has to be recorded. If you tell a child that we are recording your every action the moment you come on a school school's tool or a
Yes.
school's window,
Mm.
the whole, the child would be very, very cautious. Oh, my
Yes. Yes.
actions are recorded. I need to make sure that I don't do anything wrong.
Mm.
Disclaimers screens. Okay, it's a human psychology. Maybe Mr. Sharma can explain a little bit more on that. If you tell somebody again and again, this is wrong, somewhere in the back of the mind, if I'm doing that wrong, I am more scared. Oh, this is wrong. So even basic things like when you go for a classroom, have a disclaimer window. It does not take that much to create a disclaimer window. Act out point 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in
Mm.
bold and bright letters. This is not allowed. This is not allowed. Every classroom, before the classroom begins, have a screen ready. Doesn't take that much. So these small things, if we take care of, I think we can still create a much better environment.
Mm. Right. Okay. Thank you, sir. Rachna ma'am, I would like to follow up with you on this. How exactly do you feel these guidelines would be able to translate into the curriculum? I mean, somewhere we need to tell them that stringent rules have been put in place, considering online is here to stay. So, ma'am, if you could just spend a few minutes and just tell us about how these guidelines can be incorporated, that would be very helpful.
Yes, the like whatever has been said right now, I earlier told the whole audience that we are going to
Hmm.
include
Yes.
cyber ethics. Like these cyber ethics will include all these things, that how a teacher can start the class, how school will take this all the
Hmm.
safety precautions, and if something is within the school
Hmm.
boundary, so how can they make that boundary very
Right. Insecure.
very
Hmm.
safe and secured and strong, so that nothing cropped in from the
Hmm.
outside. And of course, and I would focus rather more on this internal strengthening. Like they should it was already said that we should we should have that kind of thing, that that discipline we need to inculcate in students, that the in the face to face classes, the way they behave, they need to behave in the
Hmm.
online
Online. Yes.
classes or e-classes. So the whole shift, if it is there from face to face to online, the whole disciplinary requirement, the whole ethical requirement, the whole moral, human, ethical e-values, those kinds of things should be there while using this online education. And that curriculum, yes, that will definitely talk about all
Hmm.
these things.
Right, great. Okay, thank you, ma'am. Dr. Saha, I would like to come to you next. You've been here for quite some time. We finally would like to ask you as well a few questions. Sir, I guess we all have discussed in detail that there definitely has been a shift, and I mean, it has brought about a lot of changes in our way of living, and of course, in the whole style that classrooms have been following. So, now, sir, since you are heading skill training, if you talk specifically about vocational courses, they are a little different from your traditional courses and your traditional education that you gain. So as far as these vocational courses are concerned, will since they're all practical skills, will cyber security also become a part of these courses now that it is inherently going to affect all of us? What would you like to say about that?
Yes. You see, cybersecurity, of course, the automatically came into an existence before pandemics also.
Absolutely.
But now, of course, the eminent speaker has highlighted its importance differently.
Mm.
Now you see, there is of course, there are a lot of my colleague, eminent lawyer will definitely give more light on it, because some way, although it's a good effort, the school has started that online classes, but whether a formal permission has been taken to record, it is, of course, it is completely, I may sound complete negative, because here the children from classes 1 to 12, each and every individual, because especially for the young kids, some permission need to be taken while recording their privacy, no matter they are attending the online platform-centric classes. Now, this is one issue, but I'm coming back to your questions, which is related to skill education. You see, the practical through online mode for certain areas, of course, it can be done, unlike the financial market management your all IT related subjects.
Yes.
But practical skills like automobile and all, it needs the both blended approach. For proper systemic understanding, I think this online and digital platform will give the thorough knowledge, but practically doing something, troubleshooting something, or identifying any design related problem, understanding component can be done through the online portal. But practically doing, that needs the real time. Even if you think of this, although our all physics, chemistry, and bio lab, all these three labs are readily available in our O labs.
Yes.
But that is for the purpose of understanding and recapping purpose. But they need to do hands-on. And unless and until that hands-on is done, the knowledge and learning is incomplete. So for temporary objective, I think for practical or any project-based learning can be done through the system. But here we need to completely understand whether we are breaching somewhere the privacy issue of the children, and how far system is robust. Because many schools are using many platforms. I am not naming the individual brand, but here, how far the platform is safe.
Right.
That need to be also tested. So my submission here, that if some mechanisms, either from the side of the government-led agency or some agency may come forward to check the robustness of the system, because one fine morning we got a notification from the side of the government that this particular platform is not safe. What about others? So that rating is required, so that from the side of the regulator like CBSE and NCERT and other body can notify, okay, these are the safe platform for the country, you can use it blindly. So that is my submission.
Right. So
but
thank you,
practical component only through online, it is not the solution. It is temporary.
Right, of course. So just drawing from what you said, Sheetal ma'am, I'd like to ask you one more question. Now, since you've been doing a lot of trainings and you've spoken to so many students and teachers, so somewhere I do agree, and I hope you would agree too, that there has to be a lot of focus on this whole training aspect. And coming from Dr. Saha, the fact that you should know how the platform works, knowing what features are available. In fact, all the experts did mention understanding the platform, the risks, and protecting yourself. Now, ma'am, to be honest, a lot of trainings are happening around the country on a lot of topics. But still, we do have these conversations where people are still not digitally literate, maybe in a sense. So what kind of model, or rather what specific approach would you recommend for these trainings so that the efficiency is higher than what we are getting right now?
Yeah, sorry.
Yes.
So, yes, as we go more and more digital, I'm also seeing so many trainings and happening virtually. But then, what happens is the common question that most of us are debating is that, is it really engaging? Is it just a one-way kind of information imparting? How do you make it engaging using technology, and how do you, and as Saha sir rightly said, there are a few things which are going to be in blended mode. I mean, knowledge and information can be given online, but then you have to have hands-on training also.
Yes.
So there are multiple challenges that are going to keep on emerging here. But what I feel is, since we have been doing an online training in Maharashtra for 40,000 teachers, it was a huge challenge for us also, because these teachers came from across Maharashtra, from the rural areas, and how would they, like, WhatsApp was also a challenge, and how do you take them to an online platform and train them was a very big challenge, because in the first year of the training we actually had to go down to the level of where we had to run a full-fledged helpline where teachers, even if they uploaded a PDF, they would call up the helpline to ask, just check and see whether it's uploaded or not, and these kind of issues where usage of the platform is concerned. Second is, how do you make it engaging, and how do you make it really interesting, and how do you impart the knowledge that you really want to impart through an online platform? Basically, that's another huge challenge, because what happens is, if we look at, like, well, since we are doing a research on online training, what we realized is that our brain has evolved basically to keep us alive, and survival is its major role. So whatever stimulus from the environment that the brain is picking up, major stimulus is for safety and survival, basically. So for learning and development, how do you make those stimulus that the brain has to pick up the stimulus? For that, the stimulus has to be engaging enough, has to be novel, has to have certain aspects, So all that, when you're doing face to face, it is you have an immediate feedback of what your audience is going through, and you can change your techniques then and there. So how do you really make an online platform as effective as a possible classroom is something which is a huge challenge. And there I feel lot of interaction between domain experts, content instructional designers, technology experts, and psychologists. Everybody, it needs to come in the play to really create those kind of engaging trainings, basically, in the first place. They just can't be like, okay, now you put up a training for the sake of a training, and somebody is just clocking those many hours and just a tick mark training. So there's no way you can get real-time feedback. So then the technology has to be so interactive. Gaming, for example, now when we're talking about even cyber safety, if you look at the effort that the people who are diverting our children into all these dangerous spaces online, the kind of efforts that they're putting up to attract our students, engage them, and to a level of addiction to certain things. So similar or more efforts would be required from people like us from the education system to make the virtual platform really as effective and engaging as it is for all stakeholders, whether it is teachers, whether it is parents, whether it is students, anybody else. As we are just discussing, that there are so many stakeholders, and we'll have to define each stakeholder. We will have to define their profiles and their needs, and whose purpose is being served by the training is also very important. Like some training, I mean, I'm seeing so much content where the content developer is very happy with the training, but what about the receiver? Basically, there are major questions you need to really answer. So these are things which I think online trainings will have to focus on. And again, I feel technology, the platforms per se, a few of them are very complicated and are an overkill in India, especially the kind of awareness levels that India has. So we need to have simpler user experiences, regional languages, simpler. We have to go very simple. Complex concepts explained very simply using technology, and technology can do miracles, is what I feel, and you have to be very fast at adapting it and making the best use of it as an enabler is what I feel. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Dr. Saha, if you'd like to add maybe something to this whole aspect of training and making platforms safer, I think that's something very important, because platforms, there are many, but again, knowing what is right for you and understanding the purpose that it serves and whether it's fitting you best. So coming from there, and from the perspective of a child, the fact that they may not be aware of the various intricacies of the platform. Ms. Rachin, I'd like to come to you also after this question. The whole privacy perspective, I think it's a different discussion altogether, but maybe Dr. Saha, if you can just throw some light on this training aspect.
Yes. So this is basically, I will speak platform independent and not really synchronous mode of learning, both for the student per se as well as for the teachers per se. The asynchronous mode, anywhere, anytime. So now, if we think of the physical teachers training, let us assume a physical teachers are taking a training for the 50 teachers. Similarly, a classroom for 40 or 45 students. Teacher is taking the class. Now, the same things is being recorded, chapter-wise or topic-wise, put in any platform, and announce, the school may announce, okay, these are readily available in this platform. Based on your suitability, you looked into. Now, school may fear, or the organization may fear that they are not going to see this. Okay, they may they may take the advantage out of it. So all those will prefer the synchronous mode of teaching and learning. So here the advantage would be the massive participation without compromising the privacy. Let it be there, any platform, whoever can upload and whichever platform. Now, whenever one is trying to access the data, now suppose think of, I'm now coming to a simple platform, YouTube. It is not asking about your identity. Or if you go to Facebook, then of course, again, the identity need to be given. So I am not going here to compare any platform, but my submission is wherever it is freely available without disclosing the identity. And that would be, then you are safe all the gamut of cybersecurity. Of course, certain aspects will be there. You unknowingly also you are going to emit some data to the those service provider that you don't know. We don't know. Many a times we will emit all those data unknowingly. Unlike your, if you look into this Google Map, you are traveling, you are looking into, you are not providing anything, but everything you are emitting, whether you are at Lodi Road or you are at some other location. So that way, it would be there. But for the safer side, I think teachers training as well as the classroom, we can go in that dimension. Then perfect schooling from home for those this particular in any crisis situation, and not only this crisis situation, even the extreme winter bound area. Think of the sports persons. Think of the student with special need. They are not regular attendee in the school. So for them, this platform centric solution would be a extreme thing, and they can enjoy and they can come up at the same level of others. Similarly for the teachers, those who are shy and those who are not able tech savvy, through this period, they are taking the advantage and they will come up equally more as a confident teacher. And we experimented this with CBSE. Physical training by complete 1 year, we are able to reach hardly 2 lakhs. बहुत मुश्किल से. Per year, we are training 1 lakh, 2 lakhs teachers training. But during this last 15 to 20 days, more than 5,000 online sessions we arrange, and almost 50,000 teachers we train.
Right.
So that's the massive requirement. So for the teachers training, of course, all the matured people's online training would be a huge solution, and it will have a huge impact. Thank you.
Right. Thank you. So just to sum up what we all discussed, I know from the training perspective, I think the caregivers, be it teachers, parents, guardians, they really need to be prepped to deal with this change. But coming back to children and the issue of their privacy, Mr. Arjun, if you could just maybe shed a little bit of light on the privacy aspect. Number one, is the child competent? I mean, let's not get into a lot of legal discussions, but number one, is a child competent to agree to terms and conditions? Again, a different discussion, but you have these nitty-gritty that children are not aware of. So what kind of terms and conditions they're agreeing to. Number one, the platform, what kind of information the platform is taking. Are the children themselves, I mean, of course, as a from a holistic point of view, the school needs to come together, and so does the family. But at an individual level, what should the child keep in mind to ensure they are safe online, they are not sharing any data that is not to be shared, and those things?
All right. So first, let me start by clearing some confusion. There is a little bit of confusion, like that, what actually goes on when you talk about the privacy of a child. Now, talking about the privacy, it's actually a whole together another decision, but let me give you the key points. When a child is coming on an online platform, which is hosted by school, he is doing 3 things over there. First, there is an audio visual interaction with a mentor. Second, there are text messages what they can send as a question to their mentors, or some comments that I did not understand this, perhaps you would like to repeat it, because in a large classroom it's practically impossible for every child to have so much one-on-one time. So a lot of schools, they are telling the children all across, that please send your questions and your comments over there. So there are chat windows which are over there, which are pretty open during the classroom, wherein you can talk to each other, you can talk to the mentors, and so on and so forth. Third thing what a child is sharing are the assignments with the school, or the school is sharing a questionnaire. Now, whatever is the intellectual property of the school can be recorded without an issue. I am not talking about the audio and the video conversation. A school has a right to keep all the questionnaires, all the chat windows, because those are meant for conversations with the mentor. Most of the schools, they still retain the answer books with them. So any communication which is in a text format, like in the boys' locker room case, they created a different group, first on a platform like this, I will not name the platform, then on a social media platform. So if a school can monitor what the children are writing in those chat windows, and like communicating with each other where they're not supposed to do that, because in an online classroom they're supposed to do only communication with the mentor and with nobody else. Most of the tools have this kind of what you may call it, like security feature built in, where the students cannot communicate with each other. But if you don't, it's important for school to have a very strict control of what children are writing to each other, so that they are not hurling abuses at each other. They have not created a mini room over there, and you need to totally maintain that. Now, as you very rightly said, children of this age, they cannot get into legally bind consent form, or the parents will never give that. I never mentioned that you should record the audio and the video. No, that is like breaching the privacy of a child, because it would be a lot of headache for a school to ensure these videos are not misused. B, like where would they even store it? Like schools are not data centers, like it would be impossible to store it. But school has a right, and every school should keep a very strict record of what students are writing during these video conferencing calls. Number one. Number two, some of the schools, what they should do is, if there is a consent give, or let's say like, okay, a hypothetical situation, an incident happened in the classroom which needs to be flagged off to everybody. How do you do that? So most of these video conferencing tools, they have an in-session recording, which gets deleted the moment session is over. So you should take use of that. That is not keeping records. That is keeping records till your session is going on. In order to either flag it to somebody, an incident happened, somebody just started hurling abuses. You need to make sure that you need to point this to the parent. How would you do that? You're not court where you would go and put everybody in evidence. So in-session recording, which is not kept as a data, could be a very good option here, which is not either shared with anybody. They're just used to monitor. Reach out to the parent and tell them that, look, your child did this, we need to bring it to your notice, and then take it forward. One of the other things which I want to mention is, now there are hundreds of application platforms available. Virtually impossible for any government to even just come out with a rating system. This is good, this is bad, this is lacking, and this is not. As everybody very rightly mentioned, we need to think of a different approach. What we need to do is, we need to come out with what are the bare minimum requirements needed, which every platform should have.
Must have.
What are the essential features which are needed, which every platform should have? Instead of going like assessing platform by platform, we need to have requirements which are penned down, which every school has to follow. So these are a couple of my cents. I hope I made sense.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Also,
You're very
one more
welcome.
question I would like to ask Dr. Manoj. Since technology is here to stay, and considering this current lockdown situation, we all have moved considerably to online platforms. I mean, I myself am using my laptop like 90% of the day, because there is no other option. You have all your meetings, classes, everything happening online. So, does this lead to imbalanced usage? Number one. And digital well-being is something that makes a lot more sense in this current situation, because where on one end we are obligated to use our devices, on the other end we also want to reduce and balance the usage. So I would just like to quickly, sir, if you could maybe mention a few pointers to keep in mind for digital well-being, and if the other expert would also maybe just share a few pointers in the context of well-being. I think that will bring the entire conversation to a to a good point?
Sorry, good question. And first, we have to understand, are we developing addiction to technology? So I would say there are three criteria which we look into. The first is like if you have a preoccupation with the use of technology, your mind always remain with technology either for any kind of platform. So that's the first. That's the first yes in your life. Second is loss of control. Are you losing your control for use of technology? That's a very core criteria which differentiate between addictive use and normal use. Like most of us, like sometimes feel that after half an hour, after 15 minutes, after 2 hours, I would log out. But that 2 hours doesn't come, and that goes till 2 a.m., 3 a.m., and sometime in the young teenagers, it may go up to 4 a.m. also the case in which we
Yes.
are seeing. So the loss of control is the second criteria of addiction. The third
Right.
is your use, you are persisting your use, you are persisting your same schedule of technology use, despite you know that it is affecting your lifestyle. When I say your lifestyle means your sleep is getting disturbed, your communication is getting disturbed, your day-to-day activities are getting disturbed, and academic activities are also going here and there. I think you're procrastinating everything. But still
Right.
you feel that I can continue my use. If these three things are happening, then you are moving towards excessive and addictive use of technology. So that's a
Right.
thing which we have to see whether in children, whether in adults also. But now what we can do? The first thing always comes with the acknowledgement. Acknowledgement comes with a consciousness that am I using too much? This question we have to ask to ourselves only first. Am I using too much? The child should also ask to himself, am I using too much or I am into too many other things also while doing studies and all? Because generally we have seen when the child gets distracted for technology use while he or she is doing studies, the mind takes almost 3 to 5 minutes to reach back to the same concentration level.
Yeah.
This means the number of times the child is getting distracted, the mind is also taking the same amount of time to reach back the same concentration level. It means the productivity may not be as good as the child expects. So, first thing is acknowledgement. We have to be conscious. Am I using too much? If the answer is yes, then the second thing comes what I can do. Second goes for action. What I can do. The first thing which comes, you schedule your use. Sometimes we recommend every 30 minutes of screen you take a break. The break is there after 30 minutes of use of screen. It will improve your physical well-being. It will improve your psychological well-being as well as it will reduce the tendency for addiction also. Third thing goes like involve yourself in sometimes without digital free activities also. Like let's be spend some time because lockdown is the highest time now. If we can cultivate these habits to be together and spend time, good quality time in the family context. Because in one of the family, when we recommended at least 1 hour every day they should spend together, the family came back to us that it's okay to save 1 hour together, but we don't know what to do in this 1 hour. So basically means that somewhere the family, all of us have lost the habit of conversing in the offline mode. So I think we have to develop that habit of conversing in the offline mode. And we have to bring physical activities in the children. I think sometimes we are taking away those physical activities from the adolescents and children's lifestyle, but I think we should encourage them to spend some time in the physical activities. As much as they can do, like they should, in case if it is not required for academic work, they should read without assistance of any apps and other things so that they can concentrate on the studies and the other academic matter. And the last suggestion goes at least 30 to 40 minutes. It's very hard advice, but we give to everybody. At least 30 to 40 minutes before sleeping time, no mobile phone use, no online activities. If you can do this much, your sleep will be on time and your other day activities will also happen on time. And the last is we generally promote to every one of us is digital fasting. Till now, we have a lot of fasting, but now the concept has come for digital fasting also. At least sometime, one day of the week or one afternoon of the week, spend without technology and let's do something offline which you can enjoy and your family can enjoy. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Dr. Noor. I think not just the children, I myself feel that I need digital fasting. I feel I should also shut down my laptop maybe after the webinar. Quickly, Professor Ranjana, what do you feel? I mean, you did mention the alternative calendar. I am pretty sure that you do have activities like these mentioned in the calendar that can, help in both educating yourself and developing skills and also balancing online offline. So, would you like to add something on this digital well-being aspect?
Yes, Janice, and I really I must thank to Dr. Sharma, and he has rightly said that really we are addicted towards this technology, and uh, God knows what children are doing. And moreover, I'm also surprised when I heard from a parent that even preschool education is being provided through this online mode, and these small children are really forced to sit before the screen and and learn from the teachers or whatever online classes are going on. So these kinds of things are there. Really, we are going to extreme that
Mm.
needs to be seen and that needs to be balanced. And moreover, one more thing I came across during this kind of thing, uh, some parents have really complained that they have 3 children or 4 children, and they have one laptop in home and 2 mobile, but the schools are keep on forcing like online education for all the 4 children. Now, how these all the 4 children can sit? There are no 4 laptops, no 4 mobile. Now these and parents are also working from home. So this entire scenario we need to see that, and then we need to balance. So school needs to understand that there are diverse kinds of situations at the home of children. So how they can make balance of this on this online kind of classes, and what various modes they can adopt, not only like only computer education, but also they can go for television, they can go for radio things, they can go for like self-study things and lots of activities which. And moreover, we are also suggesting everywhere where it is alternative calendar or where it is guideline for online education, that mental well-being, because it is really required. After getting too much on the screen, the children are really developing headache, they are developing
Mm.
stress, they are developing anxiety. So those kinds of things, so for that we have given small activities in our alternative calendar as well, for teachers, for parents, for students. And also we are recommending lots of even yogic exercises, even eye exercises, hands exercises, shoulder exercises, so that they should not like get postural defects, get this mental diseases or mental stress. So those kinds of things we have recommended, and I'm waiting for this new curriculum exercise. We would be including these kinds of things in balanced way in our curriculum also. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Professor Ranjan. Dr. Ms. Sheetal, if you'd like to add something to this, I mean, the importance of digital well-being and this whole shift, kind of, imbalancing and destroying our current routines. But we have to learn to live with it. So, how do you think would a good balanced usage look like?
Well, difficult question, but let me just say that today I'm really happy that you have invited Ranjana ma'am and we could hear her, because the work that they do is phenomenal and the impact that they have is so huge. The kind of guidelines and the alternative calendar will really help balance out lives and stress, and probably even probably reduce the stress of people. Like it's okay. This is a very unusual situation that we have all landed up in, and the responses are going to be unusual. There's no need to just have those picture perfect responses all the time, because this is absolutely an unusual situation. We never dreamt of this kind of situation globally, basically. So here, balancing and mental stress, I feel like when we are all talking about having a high immunity in this COVID times, because that is the first problem that we are tackling, and this is the situation which is going to be tackled on priority. So mental health is very important. It's going to play a very important role. Even Dr. Sharma would probably agree or throw more light on how it also impacts immunity levels. And so children, parents, everybody also have to give equal importance to balancing mental stress. And of course, so I'm not the right person to comment from the psychology perspective. Basically, Dr. Sharma would be able to help us much more, but I really feel it is time to take a pause, reinvent, rediscover so many things, and even introspect a lot, basically. Yeah,
Right.
thank you.
Ma'am, because well-being will definitely have to be a part of conversations now. And considering, you're conducting so many trainings and you will definitely have initiatives coming up, I think digital well-being will be an equally important component. So,
Yes.
along with online safety, you have to talk about digital well-being. So, I thank you so much, ma'am. We'll just quickly take up a few questions that we are seeing in the chat box. So, Dr. Saha, one question is because of this whole shift, I am sure the whole process that is followed, and even and specifically in the context of the board examinations, the whole timeline has gone haywire. So, I mean, there are still exams that have to happen, especially students of class 10th and 12th. So, how would you think the whole structure would change? I mean, since again we don't know if this lockdown is going to end, if things are ever going to be the same. So, specifically with respect to the assessment process, how do you think CBSE will be managing this, and any tips for the students who are waiting?
Easy sounding, but very difficult question.
So, but you are the
Ba-
expert.
Basically, for this year, I think already board has announced the date sheet for the remaining exams. So we are going as it is. But for 2021, I believe new mechanisms we need to adapt, and we are constantly in touch with NCRT and other academic fraternity, including the university, because any systemic change, especially in class 12, has a greater impact on the university first year admission, because the curriculum content is associated with the professional entrance exams also. So standalone decision some way will impact a single board student. So that's why we are waiting, and holistically NCRT is the right body who is also working on the both online and offline assessment strategy, and we are going to follow that. And of course, for the board examinations, some thought process is going on. And once we will upload our sample question paper every year, it is a routine affairs from our side. We upload the sample question paper for both secondary as well as senior secondary. So there, I think any systemic change, it will reflect. Now it is brainstorming, discussions, and so that we want to safeguard our student interest. So with that, we are closely working, multiple bodies, we are working together.
Right. Okay. Thank you, Dr. Saha. Mr. Achan, I have one question here from one of our participants. So, in light of the recent events, the fact that in many situations children are falsely blamed because things are taken out of context, things just blast up in social media. So, if one does find themselves in such a situation where they're innocent and their name is being spread around in social media and they're receiving a lot of flack, what should be the immediate steps that a young child should take?
Okay, so there are two things what a child should do. Number one, flag off every incident to the parent immediately, without any delay, without any other hesitation. Because if you don't flag off to your parents in the initial stage, because on internet, the quicker you can contain an issue, the quicker it will have an effect. Because the longer you let it grow, it will keep on spreading. And once practically if a thing is on internet, it's impossible to delete all traces. First step, flag it to your parents. Second step, if it is in a medium which is controlled by your school or an institution, flag it off to them immediately. It should be done realistically via their parents. Third step, if there is any crime which is committed, or let's say there is an obscenity or any other malicious intent which is posted for the child, raise a complaint at the cyber cell without any delay. If the person in context is a minor, their information will be withheld. A parent can raise the complaint on the child's behalf, and they will take the appropriate action. And they're pretty serious when a child's future is in the play over here. So step one, raise it to your parents. Step two, if it is an institutionally controlled media, raise it to them. Even if it is, let's say, social media, most of the social media platform has an amazing response when it comes to any issue with respect to a child. They will take care of the issue immediately. But if you have even a faintest of the clue that this can harm the future or the integrity of the child, put up a complaint in the cyber cell without any delay. You don't need to be a lawyer to do that. Just pick up a piece of paper, just write to the cyber cell, mention your complaint, sign it, There are cyber cells all across. Submit your complaint and they would work on it on a lightning fast speed. But do not hesitate. Do not be embarrassed. It is not your fault. Somebody misbehaved with you, played with you, or misappropriately put some any information. Just put it out to the right authorities and they will take care of it. Don't try to deal with these perpetrators on your own, because most of the kids, what they do is they'll say, okay, we will take care of it on our own. Don't do that. Involve an adult and let them take care of it.
Right. Thank you so much. So I think we've kind of run out of time. Once again, I would like to thank all our experts. I think we've really discussed some very important aspects that we have to deal in today's world, and I think we've covered most of the questions that we've received in the comments, and we're receiving a lot of praise for the experts. So once again, Professor Ranjana, Mr. Rachen, Ms. Sheetal, Dr. Manoj, Dr. Bishwajit, thank you so very much for your time, and I hope that we'll be able to continue these webinars and keep talking to our wonderful participants about all these upcoming issues. So once again, thank you to our panelists. Thank you to all the
Thank you
participants.
for having us. It was a pleasure.
Thank you for being here. Right. So I hope we get to talk to all of you soon and have more fruitful discussions. So signing off, take care, everybody.
Bye-bye. Namaste.
Thank you. Thanks, Janice.